And I'll start off with the 357 Magnum. It was introduced in 1935. There was several people involved in getting it done. It came in the blue box, like you see, and in the box contained a tube with a card to send in to get a registration number for it. And it came with a screwdriver to adjust the sights and the gun itself. And there was also two sight in an envelope. One of the sights was for 357 Magnums and one was for 38 Specials. And it also had to order. These guns were basically custom ordered. You had to order it from the thing. And interesting enough, as we go on, I'm going to give you some prices, but this was Smith & Wesson's cost was $60, which is almost triple of what they were doing, making guns for dealers and distributors at that time. So it was an expensive revolver, become very controversial. I'm going back up in the history a little bit. This revolver was based on the end frame. The end frames were introduced in 1905, I think it was, in the triple lock, and this is one of them. There was 15,000, a little over, made of these, but 5,600 of them are in 455, which this one is. And this one's real low serial numbered. And notice it had the shroud under it here. And well, of course, this was a war gun, so it had the swivel. So a third of them were shipped to Great Britain, but they did not like that gun. And so Smith & Wesson Wolf and Clark come to Smith & Wesson, and they asked in 1926.
On your first in-frame here, you mentioned that Smith sent a lot of them to Canada, and
most of them in Great Britain.
But weren't they shipped back and they reboard them or something?
Some of them were. This one is bored so you can shoot either one. But very few of them are done that way. If you open the cylinder, they just made that little cut on the cylinder just enough to make the hit 45 shell fit in there. But, Smith & Wesson historically had made guns for dealers and special orders. The first one that comes to mind is the Beaker 22 model. They ended up making 1,000 of them, but 300 of them only went to Beaker. But Wolf and Clark wanted an exclusive dealership. So there's an article in the Smith magazine that comes out every 3 months or so. And it took them a whole year before they finally produced this gun. This was the Wolf and Clark. And this gun, if you notice, is a later model because it's got that medallion in it. This gun was actually in 1927, January 1927, Smith & Wesson finally sent Wolf and Clark some guns. And the first, this one was in the first 50. It was shipped in January 27th, 1927. And everybody said, well, look at that. And they see that picture and they said, well, that's got the wrong grips. I had a hell of a time getting these original grips. You see in the picture the dark area around the thing? It had the wrong grips on it. They were the ugliest plastic yellow grips you ever seen in your life. And it took me forever to get the right grips. Since this gun was shipped in 1927, during the war, they quit putting the medallion in the grips. And after the war, they just kept on not putting the medallions in the grip. And then in 1929, they went ahead and put the medallion in the grips, like all the later models will have. When Smith & Wesson said they could make this gun, They told them they would make it with the shroud, but they wouldn't put the triple lock in it. They didn't want to do that more. It was not needed. And the British didn't like it, so they took the shroud off, and there was like 69,000 in-frames shipped to Great Britain in World War I without the shroud, and that basically became the model they used to make our 1917 Armies with. Yeah. So Wolf and Clark actually had this agreement with them. So Smith & Wesson honored it, but their dealers wanted that gun. It's in 44 Special. And they couldn't sell them. So they did talk Wolf and Clark. Now, Smith was charging Wolf and Clark $21.90 for a gun. Smith, Wolf and Clark were going to sell it to dealers and distributors at their dealer's price of $32, 10% less. So they were making a pretty huge profit on the ones they did sell that. And Wolf and Clark got over about 4,900 of these. There was Mexico, Smith & Wesson felt they could ship them in Mexico, so some went to Mexico. Now that 44 heavy duty, they came out in the 1930s with that, or 31 maybe the actual first one shipped. They sold a bunch of these. By the time of the war ended, they sold almost twice as many of these as they did the Wolf and Clark. It's in a souped-up 38 Special. First, it was called the 38 Military. Then it was called the Heavy Duty Super Police. And then they finally called it the Heavy Duty model. That should have had grips like the Wolf and Clark up here. This one is a outdoorsman. It's a heavy duty gun. They came out with that in 33, I think it was. And they sold quite well. And the important thing about this gun is this is the one that Phil Sharp started playing around with. And they developed a 357 from what he was doing with a little bit of input from Phil Sharp, but a whole lot more from Daniel Wesson, who was vice president of this company at that time. I should talk more about Daniel Wesson, and then I'll go on to the next thing. He was the vice president of Smith & Wesson through the 30s. He was the grandson of the founder, and he was named after him, Daniel Baird Wesson, but everybody at the factory called him DB. Well-liked, very personal guy. Said he knew everybody in the world that knew about guns in the 30s, he knew. He was an author, he was a soldier, and a salesman, obviously. And he was a private in World War I, then was in the reserves and worked up to a major. And then in World War II, or just before World War II, he was promoted to lieutenant colonel and spent the war, 1940, in the Pacific Front as a supply officer. As an author, he wrote 3 books. One of them's called Bullet Holes, and one's called Burning Powder, and one's a kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing about golf. He was an avid golfer, called I Can't Be Cured, and I'm proud of it or don't care or something like that. And he was a great friend of Phil Sharp. And Phil Sharp was editor and writer for Outdoors magazine, and considered an expert hand loader, and he was generally a gun tinkler. And he came up with some hot loads using an outdoorsman like this. And there is a picture in a book there that I got of him actually shooting the gun. Now these are bars of soap, ivory soap to be exact. They're mounted in a box 3.5 inches from the cardboard of the box. And he shot these. And I don't know if you can read it, but the ones is the entrance and the exit wound of the Remington factory load for the Super, at that time they called it. And you notice That's the heavy duty. And it just punched little holes. And now this one and this one are the entrance and exit holes of his hand load. If you can't read that, it's a 146 grain bullet, and I think the muzzle velocity was something like 1,370 feet per second. And so that, where I got that perhaps earliest recorded of a 357 Magnum. However, Wesson had the engineers working at Smith & Wesson with Winchester, and the actual round that come out ended up being a 158 grain bullet at 1,512 feet per second and produced about 800 and some foot-pounds of energy. Now, this is 1950s, and that's the gun on the table, the first one, pre-numbered. That one, I think, shipped in 53. It's 6.5-inch barrel. Oh, I should have said that a little bit ago. The 357 registered ones, you could get them in any length of barrel you wanted, from 3.5 inches to 8 3/4 and quarter-inch increments. That's why you had to pre-order them. They standardized these on 2.5. I think there's a few 4s and there's a few 5s out there, and then 6.5, and then there's some 8.5 or 3/4 out there. This is a later model Outdoorsman. And that's this one. That's the first one. If you look at them two guns up close, you can't barely tell them apart. And there's only two ways you could really look at it. The hole in the barrel's the same. Holes in the cylinder are the same. Is to look on the side of the gun and see whether it says 38 Special or 357 Magnum. Or you can look at the back strap. Because on the 357 Magnums, the top of the barrel strap and the sides of it, of the frame, were checkered. It's the only gun they've ever done that with. And the special machine was set up, and that's all it did, was checker those barrel tops and stuff. And the next one I'll show you is, this one's another Model 22. This is the Outdoorsman. It's very, very plain Jane 357 Magnum. Same gun. Highway Patrolman. It went through several names. And one of them was patrol officer or something. But somebody finally shortened it up. It wasn't polished as nice. The way the gun looks depends on how the metal was finished. So they didn't spend much time polishing them. The other thing they didn't do is, this is the only end-frame revolver where this area here and the top of the strap are smooth. There's no serrations on them whatsoever. And they sold quite a few of them because they were quite a bit cheaper. And that came out in 1954. And Bill Jordan was a border patrolman, exhibition shooter, and a writer. And him and some others advocated really strongly with Smith & Wesson to come out with a lighter gun in 357 Magnum. And so in 1955, they came out with the pre-model 19. They called it the Combat Magnum. It only came in a 4-inch barrel at first. And then I should talk about names a little bit. Even Smith & Wesson named fixed-value guns M&Ps, generally speaking. Target models, the 4-inch barrels with target sights, they always called them combats, like Combat Magnum. There was a model, pre-model 15, it was called a Combat Masterpiece. And so they always named that. But generally speaking, the round-barreled, fixed-sighted ones were called M&Ps. And so they came out with this, and then in 1957, they came out and called it the Model 19. And at that time, they allowed it to be in other other barrel length 6 and 2.5. This next gun is Model 66. It's sitting here on the table. Come with 2 grips. This is a special order one of 200. And they're 3-inch barrels. And this one's, most of them had Magnum ported, but this one's not. And, you know, about 12 years ago or so, you could buy these for $500-600. And then almost overnight it jumped up to $1,800-1900. For some reason, everybody wants 3-inch guns now. This gun's a 586. And before they came out with this gun, they came out with one called 581. It was only on the market about 3 years. They had a lot of trouble with it. In fact, a lot of them had been go back, were recalled, and then they're stamped with something on an M or something modified. And so they didn't come out. I've never bought one. This one's an early one, I think around 1980 or so. I've never shot it, just had it. The main thing to remember about this is an L frame. And the L frames, the Model 19s, the guys that done that combat shooting, they hot loaded 125 grain bullets in them and shot thousands and thousands of rounds. The forcing cone on the Magnums of the 3 Model 19s would split at the bottom. There's kind of a little flat on the bottom of the barrel, and they would split there. Now, I've had that 119, I've shot thousands of rounds through it and never had the problem, but I shot heavier bullets, so probably didn't have it. So the L frame came out to cure that problem. And the area in here, the yoke and all that, was beefed up and made a little larger. And then there's blue models and there's stainless steel models. Blue models anything with a 5 in front of it's blued. Anything with 6 in front of it is a stainless steel gun. This is a 686 plus, that's the one over here. It's got a 7-shot gun, is what basically the cylinder's a little bigger, end frame. This gun really shoots. It really does. And I only shoot the stainless steel guns anymore, so they're easier to keep. And this is just the 4-inch version of it. And, I went 4-wheeling with Jim Filippi, and I carried that gun, and you said it never moved all day, didn't you? I always take it when I go 4-wheeling or when I'm out cutting trees with the bears around. This last gun here is a performance center gun. Come out around 2000. This is a 5-inch barreled one. It's called a Model 627. And the logo here is different than on the other gun. And this says 357 8 times. It's 8-shot. You can load it with, you can load it individually. You can use moon clips with it, or you can use a speed loader. Actually, it doesn't shoot any better than the 6-inch barrel. Costs quite a bit more. Yeah. Because Daniel Wesson went everywhere to promote the 357 mag. He went up in Montana, I think, or British Columbia somewhere, and shot a grizzly bear with it. And he shot a moose with the 357 when they first came out. And there's a book here that's his scrapbook that was found long after he was gone, and a guy salvaged a lot of it. And there's an article of him telling about shooting the bear and how shook up he was. And they shot the bear at 110 yards, and he said he aimed for right below the throat and would hope to get the lung, the heart. but actually hit him in the head. Down. He was done. And he said he was so shaken up at shooting the bear, the guide wanted to go over and make sure it was dead. And he said he smoked a cigarette first, shaking his hands and shaking. And so, but he promoted the gun, and then there's an interview in there that he did that he'd done these shooting to prove to his own self that the gun was everything that he was saying it was. But the gun became very controversial. There's a lot of headlines wrote about it. What should bulletproof mean now? They'd done tests where somebody shot through 1.5 thick bulletproof glass. Other guns at the time just dented it, but it penetrated both of them. So that obviously would make the body armor at the time non-functional. Then there's another headline was Smith & Wesson produces most powerful hand arm. Penetrating power exceeds that of a submachine gun. Engine stopped in 15 seconds. And that gun, actually, they set up a car, had the engine running at a high speed, and Wesson shot it, and the bullet hit the case, and the car went to smothering and barely running. So he shot it again, and it hit the manifold, wiped out the manifold, and the thing died. All in 15 seconds. And so this created a lot of publicity about the gun. And he gave one of these guns to J. Edgar Hoover, serial number 1. And Smith & Wesson still produces these revolvers. In fact, last year they came out with a new, they discontinued the Model 19 in 1999. And the L-frames were what was offered. But towards the middle of last year, they come out with a new combat Magnum, Model 19. It's made of newer steel. And and Taurus just then jumped out and come out with one to compete with it. They made theirs with a spur hammer and double action only. Well, thank you for your time.
I got this when I was a kid. I asked my mom for a Colt Python, which is about $256.95 at the time. And instead she got this gun from my Uncle Dave that was almost as good. And actually it was almost as good or better. But being a dumb kid, I didn't know any better. I still wanted that 357. So I had the cylinder drilled out to 357. And then I ruined the barrel. I had to send it back to Smith & Wesson. So they refinished it. They put a new 6-inch barrel, took the 4-inch barrel off that was ruined, put a 6-inch barrel on it, and re-serial numbered the barrel to go with the serial number on the receiver. So that was nice.
Get a new cylinder too?
No, cylinder was okay, checked out okay.
Did you blow up the barrel, bulge it, or what?
Yeah, bolts it right there at the cone. Yeah. So I probably shouldn't admit that I was a stupid kid once, but that's kind of the history. But in 1972, I think it was, I went into a basketball game at Steamboat Springs, Colorado. The Sailors, they're called. And lo and behold, there was a highway patrolman, had one of these holstered in his holster with the same grips. And I thought, hey, I got one of those. So that was kind of fun to see that he had one just like mine, or I had one just like his.
This is a Model 19-3, and it's a 357, and it shoots really good. And my youngest daughter and I went to the range and shot this. And of course, she didn't shoot 357, but 38s in it, and she did pretty good. So this is one of her favorite shooting guns. This is this gun right here is 61 years old, hard to believe. But I went to the Rock Island auction and bought 3 guns, and I got a good deal on this one. And so anyway, this was done in '65, factory engraved and nickel plated, and there are only a couple dozen, like 25-ish, of these post-war pre-70 series government models engraved, and probably a tenth of those nickel plated. So I brought this, and I think I got it for like a half to a third of what it was actually worth, so I felt pretty good about that. The others, I mean,
This here is made by or under the Smith & Wesson Law Enforcement Group. This is a Mighty Midget grenade launcher for either CS, CN type of gas grenade. This one here, I've seen two different designs. One has the eagle in between the M and M for Mighty Midget, and then there's one that you see more Smith & Wesson that has the Smith & Wesson logo, and instead of just saying a member of law enforcement group, it has big bold letters Smith & Wesson. And here's some 38 special blanks for it. I brought this one type because this one specifically can be used with 38 special and 357 Magnum revolvers. So basically you attach it to the end of the revolver and use blanks. You better use blanks. But give my 2 cents for tonight.
And is that a 37?